a 25-year-old university student, 12 months on the front lines, 309 confirmed kills, among them 36 enemy snipers. The Germans feared her more than artillery. Americans called her Lady Death, July 1941. Odessa, Lyudmila Pavlichenko, a 25-year-old history student from Kiev University, arrived in the city for her thesis research. Days later, war erupted. Instead of archives, she went straight to the recruitment office as a volunteer. They didn't want her. A woman on the front line? Ridiculous. They offered her a nursing position. But Pavlichenko had an edge. Since age 14, she'd been training at a local shooting club. She held a marksmanship badge. She demanded a test. At the firing range, she hit every target dead center. They accepted her as a sniper in the 25th Rifle Division. Her first combat came on the outskirts of Odessa, near Belyaevka, a small town 50 kilometers from the city. Romanian and German forces were advancing. Her regiment was ordered to hold the high ground. They took positions at dawn. Lyudmila lay in her trench. In her hands, a Mosin Nagant rifle with a PE optical scope. Her heart pounded so hard, she thought the entire steppe could hear it. 400 meters ahead, Romanian soldiers advanced. Two officers stood in full view, scanning the terrain with binoculars. The commander whispered, "Pavlichenko, take them." She aimed. 1 second, 2, fire. The first Romanian dropped. She reloaded. Second shot, the second officer fell. Silence. Then screams in Romanian. Panic. The advance on that sector collapsed. Pavlichenko had killed her first human being, not on a training ground. In reality, 2 men. She later recalled, "When I saw them fall, I started shaking. I felt sick. But then I understood. It's them or me." That's when her count began. 2, then 4, then 10. In the first week of fighting around Odessa, she had 20 confirmed eliminations. Command couldn't believe it. A woman with those numbers? They verified every kill. Scouts, observers, fellow soldiers confirmed each one. The defense of Odessa lasted 73 days, from August 5 to October 16, 1941. The city was held by the Coastal Army against Romanian Fourth Army forces and German units. The enemy outnumbered them 3-1. Daily bombing, constant assaults, but the city never fell. During those 73 days, Pavlichenko became a killing machine. She worked methodically, up before dawn, moved to position, set the ambush, wait for hours, then one shot, wait again, another shot, 3 to 7 targets per day. Her preferred tactic, identify enemy officers. They were worth more than regular soldiers. Kill the leadership, create chaos. She learned to read body language from 500 meters away. Who gives orders? Who checks maps? Who coordinates attacks? Those were her targets. By the time Odessa was evacuated in mid-October, Pavlichenko's confirmed count stood at 187 kills. In 73 days, that's 2.5 kills per day on average. The Red Army had never seen anything like it. She was 25 years old. She'd been a soldier for less than 3 months, and she'd already become one of the most lethal snipers on the Eastern Front. The war had just begun. And so had the legend of Lady Death. After Odessa fell, Pavlichenko was evacuated to Sevastopol in October 1941. The siege had already begun. The city would hold out for 250 days under relentless German assault. And this is where Lyudmila faced her deadliest missions, counter-sniping. The Germans knew about her. They'd heard the reports from Odessa, a woman sniper with 187 confirmed kills. They sent their best to eliminate her. The Wehrmacht deployed specialist snipers, veteran hunters with hundreds of kills themselves, specifically tasked with one objective: kill Lady Death. But Pavlichenko won every single duel, all 36 of them. Here's how she did it. The psychology of patience countersniping is a war of nerves. 2 professionals, each trying to outlast the other. Whoever moves first dies. Pavlichenko would take position before dawn and stay motionless for 15 to 20 hours. No food, no water, barely breathing, just watching, waiting. She described it herself. From 6 a.m. to 9 or 10 p.m., you don't move. Over this time, you might eliminate 5 targets, maybe 3, maybe none. It depends on how the enemy moves. We never fire at the first one we spot, only at specific ones. The German tricks. The Germans had tactics. They'd throw a tin can into no man's land. It would glisten in the sun. If Pavlichenko shot at it, her muzzle flash would give away her position. She didn't take the bait. They'd set up mannequins in German uniforms hidden in bushes, bright scarves tied to branches to draw her eye. One sniper even brought a cat and tossed it into the open to create a false sense of calm. They exhausted every trick. She learned them all. Her counter-strategy was brutal. She'd use the same tactics against them, decoys, reflections. But her signature move was psychological warfare. She'd wound a soldier in the leg, not kill him outright. He'd scream. His comrades would rush to help or slow down their movement. That's when she'd pick them off one by one. The 3-day duel became legendary. A German sniper, likely a seasoned professional sent specifically to eliminate her, engaged Pavlichenko in a battle that lasted 3 full days, 72 hours. Neither moved. Both waited for the other to make a mistake. She later said it was one of the tensest experiences of my life. On the 3rd day, the German made one move too many. He shifted his position slightly, perhaps exhausted, perhaps overconfident. She fired once. He became number 28 on her list of enemy snipers killed. The German propaganda. By early 1942, her kill count had passed 250. The Germans were desperate. They tried something new, psychological operations. They addressed her directly over loudspeakers across the front line. "Lyudmila Pavlichenko, come over to us. We will give you lots of chocolate and make you a German officer," the loudspeaker blared. She ignored them. The offers continued. Then, the threats. "If we catch you, we will tear you into 309 pieces and scatter them to the winds." She was flattered. They knew her exact score. It meant she was doing her job. Promotion and recognition. In May 1942, with 257 confirmed kills, Pavlichenko received official praise from the Military Council of the Red Army Southern Front. They specifically noted her mastery of sniper duels, 36 enemy snipers eliminated, each one sent specifically to kill her, and each one dead. She'd been promoted twice already. First to senior sergeant at 100 kills, then to lieutenant at 200. By now, she wasn't just a soldier. She was a weapon, a psychological terror for the Germans, the reality of counter-sniping. What made Pavlichenko exceptional wasn't just marksmanship, it was tactical intelligence. German sniper Josef Allerberger, the Wehrmacht's second highest scorer with 257 kills, later commented that many Soviet snipers were tactically inexperienced, making cardinal errors like shooting from trees with no escape route. Not Pavlichenko. She never repeated a position, never took the obvious shot. She studied patterns, learned routines, identified officers by body language from 500 meters, and she never, ever rushed. In Sevastopol alone, she killed an additional 100 enemy soldiers, but the 36 sniper duels were what defined her legend, each one a chess match, each one a test of will, and she won every single time. By June 1942, her total stood at 309 confirmed kills. She was 26 years old, and she had become the most feared sniper on the Eastern Front, October 1941. Odessa had fallen to Romanian and German forces. Pavlichenko and what remained of her unit were evacuated by sea to Sevastopol on the Crimean Peninsula. The siege there had already begun. It would last 250 days and become one of the bloodiest battles on the Eastern Front. She arrived with 187 confirmed kills. 8 months later, she'd leave with 309. Sevastopol was where Lyudmila Pavlichenko reached her peak and nearly died. The meat-grinder German forces vastly outnumbered the Soviets defending Sevastopol. The Wehrmacht threw everything at the city: infantry, armor, artillery, and Luftwaffe bombing runs that turned day into night. The siege became a war of attrition, every meter of ground soaked in blood. Pavlichenko described it bluntly. "We mowed down Hitlerites like ripe grain." But the killing wasn't easy. This wasn't defensive sniping from static positions. This was chaos. Urban warfare, rubble, shifting front lines, close quarters death. She adapted. She perfected her craft. The daily routine of death. Her workday started before sunrise. She'd leave camp in darkness, crawl on her belly for hours to reach position, sometimes covering just 100 meters in 3 hours to avoid detection. She'd set up in rubble, bombed out buildings, or shallow depressions in the earth. Then she waited. For 15 to 18 hours, motionless, no food except bread. Water if she was lucky. No bathroom breaks. She'd urinate where she lay if necessary. Movement meant death. From her concealed position, she'd observe German patterns, where officers gathered, when patrols rotated, who gave orders. Then, when the moment came, one shot, maybe two. Then, silence again. She wouldn't return to camp until nightfall, crawling back the same way she came, day after day, week after week, for 8 months, the numbers that made her legend. By May 1942, Pavlichenko had 257 confirmed kills. The Southern Army Council officially cited her for this achievement. It wasn't just the number, it was who she was killing. Officers, machine gunners, snipers, high-value targets that disrupted German operations. She was promoted to lieutenant. At 25 years old, she had become one of the most effective weapons in the Red Army's arsenal. Training the next generation. While hunting Germans herself, Pavlichenko also trained other snipers. The students she mentored collectively killed over 100 enemy soldiers during the battle. She passed on everything: patience, camouflage, breathing control, how to read terrain, how to identify officers from body language. The average lifespan of a sniper on the Eastern Front was about 3 weeks. She'd been in combat for 10 months and showed no signs of slowing down. Her students learned why: discipline, tactical intelligence, and the willingness to endure conditions that would break most soldiers. Personal loss. In Odessa, Pavlichenko had married Alexei Kitsenko, a fellow sniper. Days after their wedding, Kitsenko was mortally wounded by a mortar shell. He died from his injuries in a field hospital. She didn't stop, didn't grieve publicly. She went back to the front and kept killing. It was the only thing that made sense in a war that had taken everything from everyone. The wound that ended it all. June 1942. Pavlichenko was in position near the front lines when German artillery opened up. Mortar rounds rained down. One exploded close. Shrapnel tore through her face and head. She survived, barely. Blood streaming from her wounds, she was dragged to safety by fellow soldiers. Field medics stabilized her, but the damage was severe. She needed evacuation. Soviet High Command made a decision. Lyudmila Pavlichenko was too valuable to lose, not just as a sniper, but as a symbol. Her kill count, 309 confirmed, was unprecedented. If she died on the front, it would be a propaganda disaster. Before she could fully heal, they pulled her from combat permanently. The final tally, 8 months in Sevastopol, 122 additional kills beyond her 187 from Odessa. Final, confirmed total, 309 enemy soldiers dead, including 36 enemy snipers eliminated in duels. She was 26 years old. She had spent less than a year in active combat, and she had become the deadliest female sniper in military history, a record that still stands today. But her war wasn't over. It was just changing battlefields. From the ruins of Sevastopol to the propaganda stages of the West, Lyudmila Pavlichenko was about to become a weapon of a different kind. June 1942. Pavlichenko lay in a military hospital, shrapnel wounds still healing. She expected to return to the front. Instead, Soviet High Command had other plans. They pulled her from combat permanently. She was too valuable, not as a sniper anymore, but as a propaganda weapon. Stalin needed the Western Allies to open a second front in Europe. The Eastern Front was hemorrhaging Soviet lives. The only way to relieve the pressure was to force Germany to split its forces. Pavlichenko, with her 309 confirmed kills, would be the messenger. First Soviet citizen at the White House, late September 1942. Pavlichenko arrived in Washington, D.C. as part of a Soviet delegation. She spoke no English. She stood awkwardly in her Soviet Army uniform, a translator at her side. The American press treated her like a curiosity, a novelty act, not a combat veteran. President Franklin Roosevelt welcomed her personally. She became the first Soviet citizen ever received at the White House. Roosevelt asked her about combat, her decorations, how her regiment fought. He spoke to her like a true gentleman, she later recalled. But it was First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt who changed everything. Eleanor invited Pavlichenko to tour the United States and speak about her experiences. The two women formed an immediate bond, a friendship that would last for decades. The press circus. The American media didn't know what to do with her. She was 25 years old, a battle-hardened killer, and a woman. They couldn't reconcile it. At press conferences, female reporters asked if she used powder, rouge, and nail polish. They asked if she curled her hair. One journalist criticized the length of her military skirt, saying American women wore theirs shorter and that her uniform made her look fat. Pavlichenko was stunned. "I am amazed at the kind of questions put to me," she told Time magazine in 1942. "Don't they know there is a war?" She was being patronized, trivialized, treated like a propaganda doll instead of a soldier who'd spent a year killing Germans in some of the war's bloodiest battles. Chicago, the speech that silenced America. Then came Chicago, a massive rally, thousands packed into the venue. Pavlichenko took the stage. The crowd expected a timid foreign woman reading from prepared remarks. Instead, she delivered a gut punch. "Gentlemen," her voice rang out over the crowd, "I am 25 years old, and I have killed 309 fascist invaders by now. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" Silence. For a moment, the entire crowd froze. Then, the arena exploded. Roaring applause, people on their feet. She had called them out, called out the entire United States for sitting on the sidelines while the Soviet Union bled. It was the most blunt, brutal speech of the entire tour. And it worked. Coast to coast, Pavlichenko toured across America. She spoke at rallies, gave interviews, attended receptions. Her message never changed. Open a second front. Stop waiting. The Soviets were dying by the hundreds of thousands fighting Germany alone. She became a sensation. Woody Guthrie, the legendary American folk singer, wrote a song about her called Miss Pavlichenko. "In the summer heat, cold, snowy winter, in any weather you hunt down the enemy, the world will love your pretty face just like me. After all, more than 300 Nazi dogs fell from your weapons." Guthrie performed it live. She was no longer just a curiosity. She was a symbol of Soviet resilience and Allied unity. Friendship with Eleanor. Throughout the tour, Eleanor Roosevelt accompanied her. The two became genuine friends. Eleanor later wrote, "There is something very charming to me about the young Russian woman, Junior Lieutenant Lyudmila Pavlichenko. She has suffered and is suffering something which is universal and binds all the world together regardless of language." Pavlichenko stayed at Eleanor's personal residence. They talked for hours, not about war, but about life, loss, survival. Eleanor understood what the press didn't. This wasn't a propaganda stunt. Pavlichenko was a woman who had seen hell and lived to tell about it, Britain and the return home. After the US, Pavlichenko toured Britain, delivering the same message, second front now. She met with military officials, gave speeches, pressed the case relentlessly. But the Allies weren't ready. Despite her pleas, the second front wouldn't open until June 1944, nearly 2 years later, when the Soviets had already turned the tide against Germany. She returned to the Soviet Union in late 1942. Waiting for her, a promotion to Major, the title Hero of the Soviet Union, the country's highest honor, and a commemorative postage stamp with her face on it. Faust of survival. At 26, Pavlichenko had become one of the most famous women in the world. She'd met presidents, toured 2 continents, and forced thousands to confront uncomfortable truths about the war. But she'd never fire another shot in combat. Her frontline days were over. The Soviet Union needed her alive, not dead in a trench. She was reassigned as a sniper instructor at the Central Women's Sniper Training School, where she'd trained the next generation of Soviet snipers. She'd survived the war, but the question remained, what do you do when you're 26 years old and your war is already over? The war raged across Europe, swallowing millions of lives. But for Lyudmila Pavlichenko, the shooting had stopped. At 26 years old, her combat career was over. The Soviet Union pinned medals to her chest, the Gold Star of Hero of the Soviet Union, the Order of Lenin twice, and told her she'd done enough. She'd killed 309 men. Now she had to figure out how to live with it. Training killers. The Red Army reassigned Pavlichenko as a senior sniper instructor at the Central Women's Sniper Training School. She was no longer allowed to hunt Germans. Instead, she'd teach other women how to do it. The students were young, 17, 18, 19 years old. They looked at her like she was a myth come to life. She taught them everything, how to control breathing, how to read wind, how to wait motionless for 18 hours in freezing mud, how to aim at a man 400 meters away and squeeze the trigger without hesitation. She passed on the tactics that had kept her alive. Never use the same position twice, never take the obvious shot, study enemy patterns, identify officers by body language, outlast them in duels. Some of her students became legends. Many died within weeks of reaching the front. The average lifespan of a Soviet sniper was 3 weeks. Pavlichenko had survived a year. She knew exactly what she was sending them into. Every night she went to bed knowing she'd trained women who would die. Some from German bullets, some from artillery. Some would freeze to death in trenches waiting for a shot that never came. But the Soviet Union needed snipers. So she kept training them. Back to the classroom. When the war ended in May 1945, Pavlichenko returned to Kiev University. She was 28 years old. She'd left as a history student in 1941. She returned as the deadliest female sniper in human history. She sat in lecture halls studying the Napoleonic Wars, the fall of Rome, medieval sieges. Meanwhile, her own war, the one she'd lived through, the one that had nearly killed her 4 times, was already being written into textbooks. She graduated and took a position as a senior research assistant at Soviet Navy headquarters, working from 1945 to 1953. She analyzed naval strategy, studied military history, wrote reports on logistics and tactics. It was quiet, bureaucratic work. No screaming, no blood, no one trying to kill her. But the war followed her everywhere. The ghosts that never left. Post-traumatic stress disorder wasn't recognized in the Soviet Union, and soldiers were expected to move on, be strong, serve the state. Therapy didn't exist, support groups didn't exist. You survived the war, and you kept your mouth shut about what you'd seen. Pavlichenko never spoke publicly about nightmares, never mentioned flashbacks, never discussed the psychological cost of killing 309 human beings. But those who knew her said she carried it silently. She'd been a student, then a killer, then a student again. But you don't just turn it off, you don't forget the faces, the screams, the way a body falls when a 7.62mm round punches through a skull at 400 meters. Her husband, Alexei Kitsenko, a fellow sniper, had been killed by a mortar shell days after their wedding in Odessa. She'd watched friends die in trenches. She'd spent 73 days in Odessa watching the city burn. She'd spent 8 months in Sevastopol crawling through rubble and corpses. And now she was supposed to write research papers about naval doctrine. Eleanor Roosevelt, the one who understood. In 1957, 15 years after their first meeting, Eleanor Roosevelt invited Pavlichenko back to the United States. This time, not as a propaganda weapon, not as a curiosity, as a friend. Pavlichenko accepted. She flew to America, stayed at Eleanor's personal residence, and toured the country with the former First Lady. They talked for hours, not about war, but about life, loss, survival, what it means to outlive the people you loved. Eleanor understood something the Soviet press never did. Pavlichenko wasn't a hero. She was a survivor, and survival has a cost. The two women remained close until Eleanor's death in 1962. It was one of the only genuine friendships Pavlichenko had outside the Soviet Union, a connection to someone who saw her as a person, not a symbol. The Soviet Committee of Veterans. In her later years, Pavlichenko became active in the Soviet Committee of Veterans of War. She attended ceremonies, gave speeches, represented the Soviet Union at international events. She was the face of Soviet heroism, proof that the Red Army had crushed the Nazis, that Soviet women were warriors, that the motherland would never forget its heroes. But it was all performance. She showed up in her uniform, stood on stages, recited speeches written by committee members. The Soviet state needed her to be a symbol. So she played the role. Behind the medals and the propaganda photos, she was just a woman who'd killed 309 people before she turned 27. And the Soviet Union didn't care what that had done to her psyche. A nation remembers. The Soviet Union immortalized her. In 1943, during the war, they issued a commemorative postage stamp with her face on it, one of the first Soviet snipers to receive that honor. In 1976, 2 years after her death, they issued another. Streets were named after her, monuments erected, Schools taught her story to children. In 2015, Russia and Ukraine co-produced Battle for Sevastopol, a feature film about her life that became a massive cultural hit. She remains a national hero in both Russia and Ukraine. Museums display her rifle. Historians write books about her tactics. Military academies study her methods. But none of that brought back the people she'd lost. None of it erased the nightmares. October 10, 1974. Lyudmila Pavlichenko died of a stroke at the age of 58. She was buried with full military honors in Novodevichy Cemetery in Moscow, one of the most prestigious burial sites in the Soviet Union, reserved for national heroes. Her son, Rostislav, stood at the grave. He'd been born in 1932, 9 years before the war. He'd watched his mother leave for the front in 1941 and return a year later as a legend. He'd watched her carry the weight of it for the rest of her life. Years later, he'd be buried beside her. 58 years old, she'd lived 32 years after the war ended, but in many ways, she never left Sevastopol. Part of her stayed in those trenches, watching through a scope, finger on the trigger, waiting for the next target. The record that will never be broken. Pavlichenko's record, 309 confirmed kills, including 36 enemy snipers eliminated in duels, remains the highest for any female sniper in military history. No one has come close. No one likely ever will. But records don't tell the whole story. They don't capture the 18-hour waits in freezing mud, the 3-day sniper duels, the moment when you realize you've just killed another human being and you'll have to do it again tomorrow. They don't capture what it feels like to be 25 years old, holding a rifle, watching a man fall 400 meters away, and knowing you're the reason his family will never see him again. They don't capture the cost of becoming a weapon. The real legacy. Pavlichenko's legacy isn't just about being the deadliest female sniper in history. It's about what she represented, a woman who refused to be sidelined in a war that was killing her country. The American press asked her about makeup and skirt lengths in 1942. She responded by standing on a stage in Chicago and telling thousands of people, "I have killed 309 fascist invaders. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" She didn't ask permission, she demanded respect. And she earned it with 309 confirmed kills. The Germans called her a threat and sent their best snipers to kill her. She outlasted every single one. Eleanor Roosevelt called her a friend. That friendship lasted until Eleanor died in 1962. And history calls her Lady Death. The woman who killed 309 men, survived a war that destroyed an entire generation, and spent 32 years living with the weight of what she'd done. The cost of survival. She was 25 when she went to war. She was 26 when it ended for her, and she spent the next 32 years carrying 309 faces in her memory. That's the real story. Not the medals, not the propaganda, not the legend. The cost. She survived. But the war never let her go.